Okay, so the color of yarns that I'm using are yellow, blue, and light blue. They're all by a different brand of yarn, but they're all the same weight. Here we are casting on, making sure the first black needle hooks the yarn and doesn't go behind it. And you continue to just weave the yarn in between the needles back and forth, just like this. Make sure the last needle, the yarn goes behind it instead of in front. Open the yarn feeder, put the yarn in. Unravel some and then begin knitting. And I'm going to clear my counter and knit about 4 or 5 rounds. As you can see, I'm using my hand for tension. Then you want to cut the yarn, take it out of the yarn feeder, make sure the last white needle, the yellow yarn is hooked underneath. Make sure you pull enough of the color A so that you can bind off the beanie, close the top of the beanie, drop it in the middle. Put the yarn in the yarn feeder. Hold both strands together lightly, knit a couple stitches, and then drop. Be sure to clear the counter and begin knitting. And as you can see, I'm using 2 of my fingers as tension, because if you don't do this, then the yarn, sometimes you'll end up with slip stitches from the machine, because there needs to be a certain amount of tension. And as you can see, we're already halfway there at 30 rows. This literally took me like 5 minutes to get to 30 rows, and I sped it up. In total, it takes me about 12 minutes to do 1 color. Okay, coming up on our 60th row, we're going to cut the yarn, but we don't have to cut a long enough tail, because we just need to cut enough so that we can tie color B into color A. Take it out of the yarn feeder. Make sure it's not hooked under the black needle, but the last white needle right there. Introduce the light blue yarn or your color B yarn. making sure that the first black needle hooks it. Close the yarn feeder, hold both pieces together, knit a couple stitches, clear the counter, and begin knitting. After you knit a couple of rows, you can go ahead and tie the two colors together. You can tie them in a couple knots. I do like 3 or 4, and you can snip it. Then continue to knit in color B until you've hit 60 rows. Okay, coming up on 60 rows here, and we're going to pull enough yarn so that we can close off the top of the hat, cut it, take it out the yarn feeder, introduce the waste yarn again. The reason why I call this waste yarn is because it essentially will be wasted. I believe this is called a provisional cast on, but I'm not sure. Knit a couple rounds in the waste yarn, and then you can take your work off the machine. And to do that, you just take the yarn out of the yarn feeder and then turn the handle, and the work just comes right off. So you should have something that looks like this now. It looks quite short right now, but you have to stretch it a little bit. And you can also go ahead and measure to make sure you have the right lengths. Another way of measuring and making sure both sides are even is by folding it in half and seeing if both end colors line up. And I'm using double pointed needles here, and we're going to now loop the working stitches onto our needles. You can see the loops in between the waste yarn. You can just grab them like that, and you want to do this for each stitch in the round. I suggest you have 10 to 11 stitches on one needle because the tension on the machine is quite tight, and it'll be harder to put more than 10 or 11 stitches on one needle. Be sure to count all the stitches, making sure you have a total of 46. After counting mine, it turns out that I actually missed a stitch, and as you can see, it's right there. That stitch is always super hard to miss, so make sure you count your stitches before you take the waste yarn off. Okay, once you have all the stitches hooked, you can just pull the waste yarn off. Set it to the side to be reused again. With the working side facing you, which is the knit side and not the purl side, you want to knit one round. You want to knit all the stitches around, and this just helps to loosen up the tension of the stitches because like I said, the machine does have a pretty tight tension. And don't forget to add your stitch marker. Okay, now we're gonna start the decreases. For this beanie, I choose to do knit 2 stitches and then knit 2 stitches together to decrease, and then I knit a round in between each decrease round. You will end up with an odd number of stitches at some point, but because this yarn is worsted, it doesn't really make a difference. So with that being said, if you want to knit 1 stitch, knit 2 together, you can do it. It's not going to be that noticeable on the method that you choose to decrease. Once you have about 8 to 10 stitches left on your needles, I think I have a little bit more. I think I have like 15, but that's okay. Get your darning needle and start getting those stitches off of the needles by binding them off. Okay, and you should have something like this. You should have one side of the hat completely done and closed off, and you can repeat the same steps for the other end. With both sides complete, you now have a reversible beanie. The next thing to do is to get one side of the beanie into the other. So open up the hat like this and then just start tucking one color inside of the other, and you should be able to get one whole side stuffed in the other side. I don't know if you can tell, but on the light blue side I have some stitches where the tension was different, and you can obviously tell, and there are ways you can fix that. Sometimes you can fix them just by simply stretching out the hat a little bit by tugging on those stitches, but it's fine. And now I'm just comparing it to the burgundy and gray beanie that is on my Instagram page. As you can see, they're both the exact same size. I think the burgundy yarn is a bit thicker, but that's okay. But they are the exact same. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.